For those of you who maybe are not familiar, maybe you're just stumbling onto financial content for the first time, when we say the FIRE movement, we're talking about this movement of folks that stand for financial independence, retire early. Who are these people, Brian?
Yeah, these are people, it's typically known for a group of people. They want to own their time. They want to, kind of know what they're doing. And there's also a lot of them are saving large sums of money. I'm talking about 40 to 70% of their earnings. And look, let me do this teacher style. The F, financial, who can be wrong with, like I said, I love the spotlight on that. I for independence.
Sounds good to me.
I'm all about building up and owning your time that much sooner. Retire? Okay, when, where, how. I need to make sure you have the abundance figured out of knowing who you are, what you value, what your purpose is. And then the early, maybe. I mean, this is the parts where I think that we have to kind of lean into why did people get so bought into FIRE and retire early? What are these people identifying actually with?
I think there's a few common goals that these folks have. This is what they really want. A lot of folks want to leave their job. They do not like what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, and they want to figure out, how can I get away from this thing that I'm doing? Other folks want to own their time. They say, hey, if I could just retire, if I could just not have to clock into the 9 to 5, then I would be able to control what I do with my time, where I go, when I go, how I go. Some people just want to do it because they want more options. They want to say, hey, what FIRE will do for me is it will allow me to be in the driver's seat where I get to control life and not let life control me. And it will give them enough financial security to pursue their next project, whatever that may be. And we're going to kind of talk a little bit about that, because I think that's where the nuance is. I think that's where the special sauce is that has caused some things to change.
Well, and I think if you go through this list, I respect every one of these things. And I think that what actually is the awesome part of this is the financial independence.
That's it. Yep.
If you can understand that and really start setting your sights, putting the goals, knowing where you need to be, that is powerful stuff. But let's now kind of pivot to what didn't work. Why do we think that this thing has obviously changed, modified, and evolved over the years?
Well, the whole idea was retire early. That means at a young age. That means I'm going to exit the workforce. I'm going to move into a stage of life that most folks don't move into until they are well into their 60s or maybe even their 70s. But I, as a FIRE proponent, want to do that earlier, in my 30s or 40s or 50s. Well, what happens is when you do that, you're not factoring in that there are a lot of life changes that take place in those 40s, 50s, and 60s. I mean, Brian, if you just think about the last decade of your life, how many things have changed since the day that you turned 40 to the day that you turned 50, and how many of those things were things that you had not even thought of, that weren't even really on your radar?
Well, some of the prominent FIRE advocates and social media people, they did this to the extreme. They saved incredible amounts, 50, 70% of their income. But then a few of them even built up enough. They were so successful building. They left in their 30s, if not even early 40s. But a lot of them, like I'm of the age now, my oldest is in college. I still have one in the house that I'm paying for school. She's got some challenges, so we have to even send her to a specialized school. You can imagine if you start doing this and you leave the workforce when you're in your 30s or 40s, your kids, that messy middle, there's a reason we've coined that. Life can humble you in a lot of ways. And that's why a lot of the prominent people that were out there have gone back or pivoted from the retire early, is because between daycare, between college, between all the things that they weren't thinking about with all the life changes, the vision for what was success changed.
That's exactly right. And what happened is that there was this laser focus on frugality and living a small life. And while that might be possible for folks who are in their 60s, who are in their 70s, who have adult children, who are in a stable season of life that likely won't change a ton, that's a hard thing to really be able to project well for someone in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, because you may think that you have that small life and that frugal footprint figured out, but then you have health changes. The kids decide they got to go to college. You have some financial setbacks. You decide that you want to change locations. All of these things really throw a big wrench into all those best laid plans that you had in your 20s and 30s.
Well, I love them. When I think about frugality and small life, everybody knows there was a period of time time where we were tightwad nation and all these things. But I have found, and I was I could squeeze, every ounce of water out of rocks when I was in my earlier years. I was the kid in high school with the $7 date night, the George Costanza coupon wallet, because we didn't have all the internet stuff that we did now. But it is one of those things. So I was tight, but I was just joking the other day because we're planning a vacation with the kids this summer. And we were telling the travel agent, I've just gotten so old that I'm picky. I want things. Yeah. So when you build your life when you're young on frugality and living a small life, you can do that while you're young, but you will find there's this human condition where it just changes. Yep. So I would encourage you to recognize your older self might not be as tolerant as your younger self, because it's just that's just kind of the human condition. There's a reason we talk about the old men on the front porch yelling at the kids to get off the front lawn. It's just I'm not hardened, but I definitely know what I like, and I know what I value, and I kind of want my financial life to reflect that.
And
too.
So I think in that exact same vein, what ended up happening with proponents of the FIRE movement is they put way too much emphasis on this idea of retirement. They could get their minds wrapped around the quantitative decisions that were necessary to achieve this goal. But what they lost focus of were the qualitative decisions that needed to be made and the qualitative thoughts that needed to go into making this successful. It was all science and no art. And they figured that out too late in the game. And I think because of that, a lot of folks who had this dream and this vision for what this season of life would be have recognized that maybe that's not exactly what's there.
Yeah, too much emphasis on retirement is a big deal.